Welcome back to Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight. This Friday, we're reviewing the week again, looking specifically at the violence and irregularities that marred the mayoral race on Wednesday. We have Mr. Peter Sematimba, one of the aspirants who was also at the center of this dispute, and Mr. Nicholas Opio, a legal consultant with AKJUL. You can send your text messages to contribute to this discussion. Our code is Spectrum 7197. Put your message, name and address between those two identities. Mr. Opio, is it plausible that people would want to discredit one candidate by stuffing ballots in favor of another person, of that person?
Now, you see, having listened to the articulate presentation by Pastor Sematimba, the following things come to mind. I think he's fallen in the same trap that his other candidates he alleges are doing, of pointing fingers and saying so-and-so did this, so-and-so did this. What is clear for me now is that no one knows exactly what happened. Okay? And we need to uncover the truth. And what the pastor can do for us is to offer, I think, his unconditional support, to hand over, if he thinks his supporters were involved, to hand over people from his group who could have been involved in this fight. Identify this to police. Because if you resort to blaming and pointing fingers that so-and-so did this, so-and-so did this, it's your word against them. No one knows the truth. So I think instead of condemning and pointing fingers and accusing others, you should be condemning the ugly sins that occurred on Wednesday and pledging your unconditional support to police investigation or any other investigation. Secondly, you do seem to think that the Electoral Commission was wrong to cancel the elections. Because if I got you right, you say only between 3 and 5 polling stations were affected. And for you, you think that is...
I did not make the statement you're alleging, but we're listening to you.
Yeah, sure. But you said that the polling, the irregularities were only reported in about 3 to 5 polling stations, and to you that's not significant. The implication...
No, I think his perspective was different. It was
what I was trying to ask you is, for example, I was listening to you, both of you on my way in, and if someone listened to your statements about what happened on Wednesday, one would get the feeling that the violence occurred on several hundred polling stations out of the 1,478. And the point I was making to you was the violence occurred actually on 2 main locations, Buganda Road Library and Bat Valley, and some violence occurred at my polling station when they attacked us. Now, it's not good that it happened, but let's not exaggerate the situation and make it look like actually all hell did break loose in Kampala.
Well, I mean, I understand that point.
3 out of 1,478 is less than 0.1%. So while it's bad, but let's put it in its proper perspective. That's what I'm asking.
I do appreciate.
Of course, there's also the risk of trivializing it.
True.
It happened in one station, one death. You could say just one person died, but the perspective of it looks like. All right.
The point that I was making is that if indeed irregularities were only pointed out in 3 polling stations, the Electoral Commission, I think, could not have cancelled the results of the election.
Should not have cancelled. That's what you're saying.
The fact that the cancellation was made, the call to call off elections in Kampala was made, is indicative of the widespread irregularity, not just violence. Violence could have only been in about 3 or 4 polling stations, but the widespread irregularity reported in the electoral process, and this is something you can't deny.
Or it could be a perception.
No, okay? it was not reported. The only thing, 3 things we've all been reading in the media. You're legal analyst yourself. You read all the information. All the information has centered on 4 polling stations. It doesn't say that there were more. So at least let's not assume stuff. Let's work with the facts. The facts are focusing on 4 polling stations.
Yeah.
And so let's not draw conclusions from the air. Let's draw them from the facts that are on the ground.
Because I do think that the cancellation was not on the basis of the 4 polling stations. There could have been widespread irregularities.
Well, at least give us evidence of that. Give us evidence of that. Don't just assume it.
All right, we need to move forward. I mean, otherwise we could go back and forth. Let's talk about militias. You put it, for the record, I asked you the question so you could put your case up forward. The truth will eventually be released. It won't be hidden. Maybe we'll move forward to that. Let's look at militia groups, and I'm not putting labels any of them. We are seeing a growing trend of militia groups. Is it real or is it perceived?
It's real. Yeah. You know, in April of last year, we conducted the countrywide research for the DDP, Deepening Democracy Program.
Yes.
And we identified throughout the country militia groups including Kampala, in eastern Uganda, in northern Uganda. These groups are real. And they have backers. They have people who are behind them.
I agree with him. They're real.
They are real. I can give you names of groups.
All right, that's
names of groups throughout the country.
Yes.
What I do think is unfortunate is that people know these groups exist, but there's a certain laxity to close down on them. Certain groups are very powerful that the police and the authorities have not closed down on them. Because I think that this group, we know where they are. They have professed, they've come out, they have names. We should have closed down on them much earlier and not wait until they cause violence during elections for us to arrest them.
Okay,
these groups exist.
Mr. Opio, I'd like you to help us here. I'll come to you, Mr. Sematimba. First of all, you recognize that they exist. I'd like us to discuss that before we move to the reluctance to tackle them. Under what circumstances would you want to see in a state, an organized state with the three arms of government, executive, legislature, and judiciary, under what circumstances would you see militia groups emerging like that?
Two things. The militia groups, one, is an expression of lack of confidence in the conflict resolution mechanisms that we have in this country.
Put that in plain English.
What happens is that the experience in the last election are that certain conflicts were not resolved, or were not resolved satisfactorily. So as a result, people seem to think that the only way to counter those threats or those conflicts is to form their own groups. I give you an example. The supporters of Colonel Oketa in Gulu, what was then Gulu district, but now it's Amuru district, had a very bitter fight in Amuru sub-county then with the supporters of Honorable Michael Chula that resulted into 2 people being killed. Now, the deaths have not been investigated. Nobody has been arrested. This time around, they tell you, look, we can't wait until they kill us. We'll form our own groups. So I think that the emergence of these militia groups is, one, a lack of confidence in the systems for resolving conflicts.
People don't have confidence in the police force anymore, in plain English.
People don't have confidence in the police to investigate these cases, in the judiciary to convict these people who are involved.
All right.
In wrecking violence.
I think you made that very clear. It's a historical statement. It's to judge whether it's accurate or not. Let's talk about the other thing. Why is there a reluctance to clamp down on them?
You see, these different militia groups serve different political purposes. People who hold offices, high offices, are behind these groups. They are. And they use these groups to advance their own cause.
Some people in government have militia groups.
I'll give you an example.
Let's get it clear, Mr. Opio. Some people in government have their own militia groups.
Powerful people in different positions have their own youth groups.
In the current government?
Yes, that they use, both in government and opposition, that they use to wreak havoc. I'll give you an example. It is known, if you go to northern Uganda, that there's a group called JCC, headed by the chairperson of a sub-county.
JCC, what does that mean?
I have no idea what it means. Headed by a sub-county chief, who have been wreaking havoc from the past election with impunity.
So you talk about more than 5 years. They have been in existence for more than 5 years.
Exactly.
So it's not a new phenomenon.
It's not new. So people both in government and opposition have their own youth groups that they use to wreak havoc for their own purposes.
All right, maybe we'll continue that discussion another time. Mr. Sematimba, do you have any information about militia groups? Any at all? You don't have to.
I don't know if I'll call them militia groups or groups that are created for special purposes or intentions, but what I do know is that after this mess that happened on Wednesday, over 100 people were arrested. Many of them belonging to someone that I'm competing with for the candidature of, for the mayoral position. These people were ferried in from outside of Kampala. Many of them coming, I think 40-something came from, of those arrested came
46, I think, came from Mukono.
From Mukono. Others came from Mitiana and so forth. They live in those areas outside of Kampala. They work in the areas outside of Kampala. They vote in those areas outside of Kampala. But they were brought in specifically to do what was done in Kampala on Wednesday.
Maybe they were polling agents to oversee the vote.
There's no maybe about it, because one of those that I'm competing with was galvanizing them after Wednesday and says, I promised you that I'll command you properly. We shall get the job done, and I thank you for coming, and I promise you I'll be a good commander, and we shall bring in more to get the job done. Very openly, it was. Okay. I think most of the newspapers, the radio stations played that soundbite in Uganda.
Right.
So if someone is confessing that he has his people, and also the police has shown that, yes, we have arrested his people that he brought in from out of town to cause chaos. yeah, they are those special interest groups that will show up. I don't know if I'll call them permanent militias, but certainly special operation militias for political purposes, especially during elections. Those exist, and those are the people that attacked us and caused the chaos, and also did the rigging to try and get me disqualified.
So you're saying, and I'm not saying this is true necessarily, you're saying that these people who came had the trappings of a militia group, organized militia groups?
For me, the issue is not to focus on the word militia. For me, that's not the issue.
You could call them vigilantes. I'm using the word militia.
I just want to say that they are groups that were brought in to disrupt the elections or to make them go a certain way. And they were arrested, and we know, and you know a bit about them, right, just like you've shown us. So they are groups of people that have been put together specifically to cause certain things to happen during elections in favor of those who are backing them up, like my brother said.
All right, were any of your polling agents arrested?
No, none of my polling agents were arrested, but some of them were hurt by these people and are in hospital.
How do you explain that? And yet it's you yourself confess and say that there was a scuffle and some of your supporters
because
could have been
the scuffles usually do not engage polling agents unless they are attacked. The polling agent is seated behind a desk along with the presiding officers and other officials doing their work. So they don't get involved in fights. The fights are brought about by the vigilante groups or whatever we're going to call them that come and are not doing anything and start to cause havoc. And then others who come also from wherever they come from to try and defend that polling station. So polling agents, generally speaking, you won't find them involved in a fight anywhere.
The reason I'm asking is that people have said that the group, and I'm not saying this is necessarily true, the group that appear to come from Super FM, which is your radio station, were doing whatever they did. They beat up people, journalists included.
No one came from...
And the policemen were just looking.
In fact, I'm glad you brought that up. No, number one, I repeat, no one came from Super FM to go attack people. No one did. I say that, and I deny that any truth in that statement categorically. Number two, the journalists got hurt during the melee. When there's a melee of people, and the people fighting one another don't have uniforms for you to be able to know who belongs to which side and who belongs to what side, you won't know who hit you.
Well, journalists have said that they were specifically targeted.
No, from what I understand, it was a fight because, like I told you, the police constables got hurt, the polling agents got hurt, the presiding officers got hurt, members of the public at the polling station got hurt, including journalists. A wild fight is a wild fight. How do people know this one is what and this one is who?
Okay, I guess we might have to hear from listeners. I'd like us to discuss something else, but before we do that, I would like us to hear from some of our listeners who are able to call in. You can call in now and make your comment, give us some information that we might not have here in the studios. Our numbers are 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0791-909-909.
Hello.
Spectrum, hello, yes?
Yes, Edmond.
Your name?
Thank you very much. My name is called Hassan, and I'm calling from Kampala. First of all, I would like to urge Pastor Peter Sematimba, first of all, to denounce the violence and speak the truth. We have seen on all television stations in Uganda that people armed with sticks, with nails, were marching from his radio station, Super FM, and descended onto innocent civilians and beat them up. Two, I would like to tell Peter Sematimba that he is saying that only the violence happened on only 3 polling stations. I would like to tell him that even if one vote is cast in your favor, but in a fraudulent way, can affect the result of the election. So that, I think, is very baseless. Honorable Peter Sematimba should say and should stand up as a man and say that I own all the mess that happened and possibly walk out of the race because we no longer trust him as the mayor of Kampala. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll take that as your personal opinion. You are entirely Spectrum, hello?
Hello?
Yes?
Yes.
Your name?
Hello?
You're live on Spectrum. Your name?
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you. Okay. Spectrum, hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Your name, sir?
How are you? This is Richard.
Richard, yes. Go on. Direct your question. Richard, you're live on air. Your name?
Right.
Your question?
I want to appeal to my colleague Sematimba that we Christians behave that way. If in any case he was involved in that chaos, he has to lead and God forgive him. But for every kingdom, fighting for